Now we are recording, and so I will jump right into the presentation. Let's see if I can make this full screen, full screen. Cool. Alrighty. So welcome to, whoops, that's not the first slide. Welcome to what I am currently calling this CSCQ Builds. CSCQ stands for CS Career Questions, which is where most of the participants have found this presentation. Made a post earlier on CSCQ this week about how you can spend your summer and how to find a project that can effectively utilize your time, especially in light of all the canceled internships that have happened. So welcome, this is the kickoff presentation, and we'll dive right into it. So this is what I'm calling day 0. I put a little asterisk next to the CSCQ because the name is subject to change. And I really don't like this animation, but okay, it's okay. All right, so welcome. Traditionally, around this time of year, people are about to start a bunch of summer internships. Internships are great. They really legitimize your resume. You learn real-world job skills. It's a very, very effective technique to gain kind of apprenticeship. You get experience with environment setup. You get experience with Git. You get code reviews. You get design discussions, project management, all this good stuff. It's great, right? But this year, set up internships, a lot of people, we've got this coronavirus. And that means over 300 companies have canceled their internships according to Hiring 20 or Hiring 2020. There's a Git repo that keeps track of these. And over 680 companies have had layoffs. And there are probably more to come. So what does that mean right now? It means that it abruptly switches to a buyer's market. And this is a quote from an experienced dev from our experienced devs on what happened during the .com bust. And the market got bad. It got bad for entry-level jobs. It got bad for internships. Salaries got depressed. Experienced devs were also facing a bit of a crunch. What the experienced devs were saying were people with strong resumes and strong employment history were still okay. But then that just leaves a question, what if I don't have strong employment history yet? What if you're just in school right now or you're just starting? What do you do now? The rules of the system just got rewritten literally in the last couple months. And when this happens, it's something just to think about. The first thing is everyone has to shift their systemic expectations a little bit lower. So I know CSCQ has this obsession with FANG. I personally don't get it that much, but if you're thinking FANG and just aiming for the top companies, it's time to expand your search. Just because what's going to happen is a lot of these experienced devs, these people who were working at whatever company, there's layoffs, now they're all available. They're going to start taking up positions that these companies are going to want. And so a lot of companies are going to have fewer openings for newer people. For myself, you learn a little bit more about my background. I considered myself a fringe candidate when I first started. And if you're a fringe candidate, there's actually a lot of interesting things happening in what's called the no-code movement. And that's something that I'm not going to talk about a lot in this presentation, but it's something to keep an eye out for. The idea is there are a bunch of tools like Bubble and Webflow that are coming up and replacing a lot of what you might think would be very, not necessarily entry-level programming jobs, but it's much more, oh, someone's messaging. Someone's asking what's a fringe candidate. So a fringe candidate is just somebody who, considering from a non-traditional background. So that's what I mean when I say fringe candidate. For people who are coming in, don't have a ton of experience, and haven't invested a lot into CS education, there are a lot of interesting things coming up with the no-code movement. And that's something I want to highlight now. We're not going to talk about a ton, but it's something I want to keep on people's radar. But I do think this idea of being a no-coder who knows how to code is extremely powerful and might be a very, very important skill set in the future. Another thing that happens during these times is companies now must be courted. In the past, candidates used to be the belle of the ball. Now it's companies that are the belle of the ball. And according to Lynn of Key Values, she recommends, and Lynn's great, but Key Values is a website that tries to pair engineers with companies that share the same values. And so it's a pretty unique perspective, which shouldn't be unique, but it is unique perspective on finding jobs. And she recommends that everybody who applies to companies, each company should have their own version of your resume. And so you have to tailor everything to each company. And the final thing that I think really matters is suddenly public resumes become that much more important. Public resumes make you luckier. And we'll talk a lot about this later. For those who have looked at the slides, you know what I'm talking about. So that's kind of the system. That's the backdrop. Oh, whoops. Cool. So that's the reality. This little snowflake means it's winter. Winter is here. Winter is not coming. Winter has arrived. So let's do something about it. And the little emoji hints at what we're going to do. So before we dive into that, I'm going to give a little bit introduction of myself. Who am I? Kind of just what's my background. So I'm Phil. I'm also Pelio39 on Twitter and the interwebs. I graduated from Claremont McKenna College in the class of 2014. I had a BA in economics, so that's not computer science. And I did get effectively what's a minor in computer science. So when I was talking about what's a fringe candidate, I described myself as one because I didn't have that hard CS degree, even though I did take a few courses. After I graduated, I was able to get a job at a company called Symphony Commerce. It was an e-commerce platform. I worked there for about 3 years. And then in August of 2017, I was part of a layoff round. And after that, I thought I was going to go and immediately go into job hunt. But one of my mentors actually told me to, hey, take some time off, go travel. I did that, wonderful experience. Came back in after a few month job search, which I wrote about. I ended up landing at Uber, and I was there until January of the beginning of this year. And I left in January to work on a bunch of projects with a buddy. His name is Nick. I think he's on the call. And we are working on a bunch of different things. And one of the projects that emerged from this is a software mentor newsletter. So this is a promoted slide. Software Mentor paid me to put this slide in here, even though Software Mentor is myself. So take that to mean whatever you want. This is a newsletter I put out. It has one or sometimes more posts a week. Topics have included things like learning about database transactions, Square's authentication outage, trying to get people to do more functional programming, my resume advice, my experience with layoffs. And all of it is to try to accelerate the career of junior engineers. The reason why I am talking about Software Mentor right now is because during this summer, I intend to write code review write-ups and do them via Software Mentor. So we'll pick projects. Somebody might come and be like, hey, can you review this project? Or can you review this section of the code? And I'll look at it and I'll be like, okay, this is something that could be worthwhile for everyone to learn. And I'll do write-ups and I'll do them via Software Mentor. So that's one of the reasons why I brought that up. I also think it's great, but it's not just me who thinks it's great. A few readers think it's great too. And so these keep me really motivated, and I am very excited to be able to write something that people like. So that's very, very, makes me very happy to read these. So objective for the summer, now back to you. So it's pretty simple. In the very, very, very beginning, I talked about internships being great because they legitimize your resume and they also give you skills that you need on the job. So my goal for the summer is to do something extremely similar, is to improve your resume, albeit in a slightly different way, and improve the skills that you'll need for the job. And that's going to be similar, but not quite the same. It's really hard to replicate a production environment, but we'll try to get some skills that definitely overlap. So I think there's really two types of resumes. One of them is your traditional resume. That's going to be just, hey, I went to school here. Hey, I interned at here. Hey, I built these side projects. That's essentially what a typical resume looks like. And for a traditional resume to stand out, you basically need to have good things on all of them. That's pretty obvious, right? Now, the not so obvious one is your public resume. So the public resume is it's a constellation of different profiles. It's your GitHub profile, your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter, and as well as if you have a personal website, which I think is a huge, huge opportunity for people to both build and use to advertise. It basically tells you who you are on the internet. And if you are useful on the internet, you have a good public resume. That's really what it is. If you're interesting and useful on the internet, you have a good public resume. And you'll get inbound opportunities. And we're not going to talk about it too much, but it's kind of like the difference between inbound versus outbound marketing. The other thing that we're going to focus on is improve your skills that you need on the job. I'm a huge stickler for code quality. Every single project that I've been on, I try to maintain a minimum bar for code quality. In my experience, whenever I haven't, I've been a part of a team that essentially spends a lot of time shooting ourselves in the foot. We redo things, we get ourselves confused, we forget things, we cause outages. It just happens when the code quality slips over time. And so I'm a stickler for at least a minimum bar of code quality. Another thing that really, really matters on the job is communication. Are you telling people about your progress? Are you giving updates on what's going on? Do we know what you're struggling with? Or are you just in the corner very, very stubbornly trying to figure something out by yourself without progress? Communication is extremely important. And one of the tenets that we're going to be talking about when it comes to these summer projects is we're going to take that from, we're going to dial up to 11. We're going to take that to a radical level of communication. And I think that's really going to help for the summer. And then there's going to be a long tail of other topics that are going to come out both through the newsletter and through your just what will just emerge as people have questions for me. So by day 90, this is day 0. By day 90, I want everybody who is a part of this to have similar-ish job attractiveness to those who have completed internships. So that's the goal. I don't know if that will happen, but that's what we're striving for. I did a quick rundown of what I think the difference is between what we're doing and what you might get in internship. Your internship is going to be a lot better for your traditional resume. I'm not going to say what we're doing is going to replace that. It's not. But I think it can help. So that's why I'm saying it's okay. It's pretty good for your traditional resume. Now, for your public resume, what we're going to be doing is by far way better, because your internship is usually behind a walled garden. No one sees what you're doing. What we're doing here, we're going to bring it out into the light. So that's a huge advantage, I think. In an internship, you're going to get personalized attention. Maybe you're going to have a mentor who will spend probably on average 1 hour a day, either code reviewing your stuff, looking out after you, meeting with you, all sorts of things, sometimes more, other times less. And the idea is that this personalized attention really, really makes a difference. I think it does. I really think it does. But that said, I think the quality of mentorship that I can do right now for our program is going to be a lot higher. I'm just comparing myself now to almost myself exactly 1 year ago. Exactly 1 year ago, I had pretty much, I think, an intern join, or maybe it was a few weeks later, but around a year ago, I had an intern. I took an intern on the team, and I was trying to spend about an hour a day with my intern. With what I'm doing now, I can spend 10 plus hours a week. So I think the quality of my mentorship, just comparing myself and myself last year, is going to go up. And so that's why I think the quality is going to be higher from this. The production skills that you gain from an internship are going to be better by far. I would be mind blown if any of our projects got to scale, needed testing and CI/CD pipelines. It's not going to happen, I don't think, but it's possible. So who knows? So the production skills that you're going to gain in an internship is going to blow anything that we're going to do out here. But on our side, we're going to have a heavy focus on learning. On the job, it depends on the culture, but there's not really time for learning. Over here, we're focused on learning. That's all that matters. And so that's why what we're going to do this summer, I think, has that advantage. And then finally, the last thing is it's going to have a pretty entrepreneurial flavor to it. So everything we do, it's going to have this undercurrent of self-reliance and doing things yourself and kind of owning what happens to your career. And I believe that that's a very entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, so the next thing I want to mention is my soft objective is at the end of summer, I want all of you to be able to tell a kick-ass story, something along the lines of my summer internship was canceled, or I didn't have a summer internship, here's what I did instead. And if you do a write-up or a YouTube video, that to me would be like, boom, all right, we did it. That's kind of what I would love to be able to see. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the structure, how I see myself being able to help and what kind of things I'll do. So it's comprised of a few things. One is office hours, that will be on Wednesdays. One will be weekly meetings, so such as this one, so every week at 5, or we might move it around a little bit. We'll have weekly meetings, and this is going to be kind of served as the backbone for this community. The last things are there's going to be a Discord server, which I'll be sending out soon. I'm going to make that. And there will also be a Twitter, I think I'll make a Twitter account, and I'll be kind of tweeting and all sorts of things from that account, as well as my own account. So for the office hours, this is the link. This is how you can book office hours. You can book them 7 days up in advance. 30-minute blocks. Because there are lots of these blocks and I might be doing lots of them or very few of them depending on the demand, I might be running late. So just be aware of that. This is kind of what I imagine the agenda for an office hour would look like. I'm kind of creating it. This is like a template. So if you think about on the job, what you'll often do is you'll have these things called one-on-ones. And if you are an intern, you might have one-on-ones with your intern mentor. And that's kind of what I'm trying to replicate. But I'm being more strict about it. So I want you to have a written summary of progress. Ideally, it's posted in public, something on Twitter, or I stumbled upon this great little, I don't know exactly if it's a blog or what it is, but it's like a newsletter type update thing. It's called Reading Supply. And there's this guy I found yesterday or the day before, his name is Gabriel, and he's doing a really great job of keeping people updated on what he's doing. And I'm not going to go through everything right now, but these are the things that will go into an office hours. And sometimes, so if you look at perhaps where we spend a lot of our time is on the technical stuff and some of the motivation stuff, but that's something that we'll get into on a one-on-one basis. So that's office hours. The weekly meetings, I think this is really important. So this is a forum for everyone to come together. It's a forum for networking and support. And so I want this to be a very supportive community. But it's also a very demo and presentation focused meeting. I want this to be a demo driven culture. So what are you doing? I want this also to be a teaching driven culture. So once you learn something, please share it. Even if people probably already know it, just share it. Like it will at least solidify understanding in your brain, which is, in my opinion, enough reason to take everybody's time for maybe 5 minutes to do it. But most likely, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people are not going to know, if not more. And just teaching that will help. And so I want this to be a demo-driven culture and a teaching-driven culture. So the weekly meetings, again, pretty much exactly what you might expect. I'll present if I have a topic. Will be every week. If there are any demos or wherever, people can definitely, this is an open mic. So for demos, share your progress. I think with every week, the idea is, I want to be able to demo. And if you can demo every week, then you're doing something really, really good. And so use this as your open mic, get in front of people, share. Presentations, this is not an open mic, but I really want people to share. I want to make sure that the presentations are of a certain quality. And so we'll do a little bit of prep beforehand. So just reach out to me via email or Discord once we get that set up, and we'll figure that out. And then finally, it's going to be time for networking. So we didn't do it this time because it was new and I was still figuring it out. For example, I added a meeting room, a waiting room, which I didn't intend. And and so we'll find a time for people to just talk. Right now, it's kind of weird because I can't hear anybody. I just hear silence. And so it's kind of strange for me. But the last 10 minutes are going to be a chance to get to know each other. So hopefully I'll hear some of your voices. But so that's kind of the structure for the weekly meetings. Discord and Twitter. Discord's going to be set up. More on Twitter later, so go next. But the reason why I haven't set either of these up is we need a better name. I don't like CSCQ Builds because it's so Reddit specific. I came up with a few other ideas. Right now, the winner so far is Summer of Shipping. I think 3 or 4 of you have messaged me saying that is your preference. It's also my preference. And so if I don't hear any strong, like, hey, like actually none of these names make sense, you should try, something else. I'm going to run with Summer Shipping and I'll make all the stuff later tonight. Oh, got a message. Cool. All right. It sounds like a lot of people like SOS and I really like that too. So, okay. Yeah. All right. If anybody has, speak now, like, if you have any objections, speak now, because I'm probably going to make the Discord right after and I'm going to run with it. Just got the momentum. So let's see the chat. All right. Got it. Cool. All right. So expectations. What you can expect from me, you can expect these office hours to continue. I'm going to do them until there is like no need for them. If I, after like 2 weeks, nobody signed up for an office hours, I might be like, okay, maybe it's not necessary. And we can change that, but take advantage of those. You can expect Thursday meetings to continue. I haven't specified an end date for the summer, but you've kind of seen me hint at the 90-day mark. And so if we finish a little bit early, if we go on for 120 days, it's unclear. But that's kind of what we're going to do. So Thursday meetings are going to happen, office hours are going to happen, and then code reviews. So I want to review code. This is something that you are not going to get unless you have a more senior person available to you. And so this is really probably the most unique thing about what we're doing. In order for me to review your code, I want your code to be public. Like, I can technically review private projects if you add me as a contributor, but as a rule, like, I'm not going to look at things unless they're public. This is partially as a rule to get everybody to do things in public. And so if you want me to review your code, it's got to be a public repo. Just send me a request to review code over email or Discord. I may not be able to review everything, so there's a chance I can't review everyone's just project. That's going to be a ton for me to do, and so I may not even review your entire project. I might just hop in on one file. I'm going to try to find the most critical components of your app, and I'm going to try to figure out, all right, what's going on here, and how can we do things a little bit differently. And so it's not quite like a code review; it's more like a project review. So these are going to be pretty meaty. But when I do the write-up, though, I'm not going to write up about the entire project. I'm going to focus so that the reader of the write-up can focus on something small. But they will be detailed, and the reason for that is I want everyone to benefit. I want to tear down why I make certain decisions, and so it's going to be that's just going to be the method. So it's going to be very deep code reviews on something that is potentially a very small part of somebody's project, and not everybody's project will get picked, but I hope the depth will make up for the lack of breadth. And finally, you can reach me via email and eventually Discord. So final thing, if you ask me a question, one thing I will almost always ask you first to do is, what YouTube video did you watch? What's the name of the YouTube video that you watched? And the reason for that is, in the last 3 years, YouTube has become a mind-blowingly excellent topic way to learn computer science. And this was not the case like 5 years ago, I don't think. But in the last few years, the number of people producing videos of quality has reached a bar that is very high. And so I would recommend you start there. It's at the point where if I need to learn a topic, that's where I start. And it's kind of crazy. Like, I used to start with blog posts, but now it's like, wow, these videos are it's just easier. So that's what I'll do for you, and start there. And then I'll help you out if we can figure something out after that. So what I expect from you, I expect you to be working on a project, and I expect you to work on improving your skills. So the first thing is come up with a list of projects, or come up with ideas for projects. Second thing is come up with areas of learning improvement that you think you need. You may not know what you need, so that's okay, but just come up. The point is to be intentional about both. And then finally, execute on your projects one at a time, and then execute on your learning objectives. This is actually extremely similar to what you will be doing on the job. On the job, the difference is on the job, you probably will have code examples that you can copy paste from, where you can turn off your brain and just copy paste. But you're not going to have that with your own project. So this makes the level of difficulty arguably higher, which is actually a good thing. So, but the structure is very similar. You have a project, you got to figure out how to do it. You don't know all the skills that you need to execute on the project, so you have to go figure them out. Very similar to what you need on the job. And then finally, share your progress. Again, this is something that you'll be needing on the job also. The difference is I'm going to encourage you to do it in public. Encourage that to be a public conversation. So now we're going to talk about picking a project. This is something that I think a lot of people who haven't started, I think when I polled people, so just a little bit background, 51 people signed up via the CSCQ Builds forum that was posted on Reddit, and about, I think 60% of you have not started projects, and the other 40% have. So this applies to a large number of you, and some of you who have started projects might be thinking about, I'm not sure, I'm not in love with my project, maybe I should try something else, and that's totally fine. So here are some attributes of a good project. So the first thing that I want to mention is it should excite you. If this project is a massive drain on morale, If you're doing this just because you think it's going to improve your job prospects, for example, if you're learning Java and Spring just because you think it's going to be good for your job prospects, I don't know if that's an excellent project. We can find alternatives. For example, something in the Node world or Golang or something that is a lot more exciting to you, and do that instead. So the first thing that I didn't talk about this in my Reddit post, but the good project should excite you. If it doesn't, you're doing it wrong. And that's one great thing that you can have here on choosing your own project as opposed to working at a company. At a company, your mentor, 2 weeks before you show up at the company, they are scrambling to figure something out. And they're just like, okay, all right, what task would be good for an intern? Oh shit, we haven't come up with one. All right, we'll do it next week. 1 week comes and it's like, all right, shit, did you guys figure out what the intern's gonna do? Oh no, fuck, all right, let's go figure it out. And then literally like the day of, then they'll sometimes scramble to figure it out. That can happen. I've seen that happen. It does happen. So what's great is you have the ability to pick what you want to work on as opposed to, some random people who don't have their shit together figuring out what you're going to work on. That's a huge advantage. Obviously, it's not always like that, but it can be. A good project starts small. Do not get too ambitious. I think starting small is extremely, extremely underrated. If you think your project is too small, that's probably a good project. A good project is deployed. So you want it to be live. People can share it. People can see it. It's real. So that's what I mean by it's deployed. It's real. It's not just a GitHub repo. It's software that's running. It uses tech employers want. And I want to nuance this. I didn't really nuance this in my Reddit post, but right now that I have you, I want you to think about it as things that are overvalued and undervalued. If everybody wants JavaScript, then it's really important to learn JavaScript. But if everybody else is also studying JavaScript, then the market has a lot of JavaScript developers, right? And so you've got to think about, okay, like, yes, I need to prioritize what everybody wants, but at the same time, I know that everybody else knows that. So like, it's kind of that kind of game. And so that's the only caveat I would add. A good project has users. You want to have users. You want to be actually solving a problem. And the reason for that is if you want to have a good resume project, it needs to be interesting. Like if one of my former coworkers, he had the best resume that I've seen from anybody I've interviewed. Why? Because his resume said, hey, I am one of the main contributors for an open source project that has like 40,000 GitHub stars and is one of the most popular CSS frameworks, maybe not CSS frameworks, but like CSS like tools out there. It's called Materialize UI. And when I saw that, I was just like, holy shit, this is already the best resume I've ever seen. And I didn't even look at his work experience. That's incredible because the project had so much adoption. The last thing that a good project is, in my opinion, is it's built in public. And again, we'll talk about that more. So some ideas to get you started. I think a great place to start is your personal website. If you don't have a personal website, then now's a great time to just build a simple one. There's so many little things that you can learn from that. Like, I don't know how many of you have deployed something to the web. I don't know how many of you have dealt with like HTTPS or like bought a domain, for example. All of this is stuff that you'll need to set up a personal website, and go do that. You learn at the very least DNS. You'll learn at the very least like what it takes to serve something up over HTTPS. That's really, really, really like, some stuff that's like, you're like, oh, it's not that impressive. Squarespace can do that. No, just do it yourself and learn some of that stuff. Another good project is a simplified clone of a popular app. The reason is scope can be defined. You can see exactly what you're building. And that helps you reduce what the size of what you're doing. The another thing that is also a really easy thing to do is build a project to support this project. So this project doesn't have a website. This project doesn't have a way for you to find other people who are working on projects. That would be great for this. Like, you can talk to me and we can figure out like what I think, this community needs, but build for this community. That's super easy. Once we get the Discord, it'll be a lot easier to have these conversations on what you think people need, but build for each other. It's great. But if you do want to build for this community, please coordinate with me because we don't want 17 people or 26 people working on the same thing. I think it's okay to have a little bit of redundancy, just because, like one approach might be really, really, really different from another one, and having two would be, just really interesting. And we can have the people who worked on those two things partner up a little bit at the very end, just to cross-pollinate ideas. Not that you have to work together on the same code base, but you can see each other's code and learn from each other. So it's actually not a bad thing to have like 2 or 3 people working on the same thing, but I don't want 26 people working on the same thing. That would be not ideal. And then the final thing I want to say is solve your own problem. So there was a message that I got the other day from somebody who was asking whether or not their project was a good project. And this is what they said. Because of the pandemic, my tutoring gig has moved to Discord. So I made a Discord bot to allow students to join a queue for tutoring. I'm worried about it being too simple. And I'm just reinventing the wheel. And so that was what what the message was. And this is my response. Looks like I hide this again. So my response was a story. And so it goes like this. Let me tell you a little story. There once was a university kid who really liked Unix, but couldn't get it to run on the computers that he had access to. So he just decided to solve his own problem and write a Unix-like system that ran on his computer, just for fun. He shared it with an email, actually a Usenet group, and other people thought it was cool. They chimed in with suggestions. The kid's name, Linus Torvald. The project, that was Linux. And so the birth of Linux, which basically runs every single web server today basically almost runs on Linux. These Android devices, it's crazy, all Linux. And so the birth of Linux came from solving one person's problem, solving someone's own problem. So if you're stuck trying to find an idea, find problems in your own life and just solve them. They can be really, really basic. I wrote a blog post about that, or not a blog post, but I wrote a post kind of about this concept of solving your own problem. Here are some examples of companies that I thought really started off by kind of solving their own problem, either directly or indirectly. And I'm not gonna read all of them right now. You can check out the post later, but that's just an idea. It's like, okay, if you want to do something that people care about, you oftentimes need to do something that you care about. So this is pretty much the last philosophical advice that I want to give, is learn and build in public. And this is an idea that I kind of stumbled upon more recently and wished I had done it. It's not something that I've done a lot of, and so don't practice what I do, but practice what I preach. It's going to be hard, but I think we can do this together. So this guy, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I just call him SWYX. He's really big on Twitter and as well as teaching and the kind of the front end development sphere. I think he was an instructor on Egghead.io for a little while before working at somewhere else. But essentially, he had this post that went viral, and it was this concept of learning in public. And so this is what he says: when you are learning, you want to teach people and create content that basically is the thing you wish you had when you were learning. So don't judge your results by claps or retweets or stars or upvotes. Just talk to yourself from 3 months ago. I keep an almost daily dev blog written for no one else but me. And so the idea is like, okay, if I'm teaching, I can at least teach myself from when I didn't know this stuff. And if I write for myself, then this is useful. And if you publish it online, well, something really interesting happens. And so there's this post from, I guess it's David Perel tweeting about Patrick O'Shaughnessy's system of learning, building, sharing, repeating. I think this is the successful way of getting better at anything. And a lot of times people skip the sharing part, but I think it's pretty, for most people, it's actually going to be better if you do share, even if it's only with one other person. You do want to be sharing, and that's the feedback loop, which accelerates this process. So all of this is great, but sharing is so important. So let's kind of talk about that feedback loop. So when you get more eyeballs on what you're doing, you get feedback. So feedback makes your product better. Feedback makes your skills better. Feedback makes your content better. Feedback forces you to get your facts straight. Any weaknesses you have, they will get revealed, but people are willing to help, and so you get better. The other thing is if you're building a product, you're going to see with more eyeballs, you're going to get more customers, and customers will talk about like, hey, I want to see this. Hey, what about this? They make your project more interesting. They make your product better. And then when you have a better product and you have better skills, you get even more eyeballs. And so it's just a virtuous cycle. I think one of the most underutilized things from students, including myself when I was a student, was Twitter. I did not really get on Twitter. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was like, oh, okay, well, people are talking about what they ate for lunch or just celebrities gossiping. It's not. One of my friends calls Twitter the meta layer on top of the internet. And so why is that? It's because everybody is there. Everyone gathers on Twitter, whether you're an NBA player or a journalist or, you know, the president of the fucking United States of America. Like everybody's on Twitter. And because it's a gathering spot, you get you get just so many interesting conversations and you discover things. Everyone's there. One of the great things about Twitter is if you're producing cool stuff, that matters a lot more than your pedigree. Twitter kind of ignores traditional resumes. Obviously, people can be like, hey, I have 45 years of experience doing, you know, like X, and people are gonna be like, oh shit, yeah, that's super cool. But Twitter isn't like Quora. So Quora kind of has this thing where like you answer a question and then you have a credential. Twitter doesn't care. Twitter just cares about the content. And so if you're producing good stuff, then people will eventually like your stuff. And so it's a proof of work kind of thing. Another thing that's great about Twitter that I didn't really understand until much later is you begin to accrue social capital to your name, and it starts opening up opportunities, and having a larger Twitter following is useful in so much that more and more people discover your ideas. So one thing that Twitter is great for is it helps you discover ideas. But then the other thing that's really great for is Twitter helps people discover you, which makes you luckier. And this opens doors, new opportunities, new friendships, all sorts of things that you would not have ever imagined. Okay, so a quick little thing on how to Twitter. This is kind of one thing that I want people to do is I want to get this community on Twitter. Twitter can be hard to get started, especially when you're starting from 0 followers, but it's a lot easier when you bring the fam. So I want everybody to be on Twitter. Once the Discord is set up, I'll have a place where people can share Twitter handles, and I will routinely remind everybody to follow each other. If you have followed me, I will eventually see your name on this list, and I will follow you, and we will all support each other. That's one of the things to kind of get started. Also, tweet your progress. You know, how are your projects going? Do you have a demo? Do you have a GIF? These will have high engagement, and that will just help people be like, oh, this person's doing something interesting. I should maybe take notice. Huh, what's this? Tweet demos. You can use Loom to have a little recording, little video of yourself in the corner as you screen capture. Very useful. You can tweet links to any YouTube videos you make, any blog posts you write, distribute your work on Twitter, make it a little bit more discoverable. I know it doesn't really like work unless you have a big following, but it's just that philosophy. And then another thing is interact with people. Like if you see something cool, just like engage people. Oh, how'd you do that? You know, get the conversation going. And finally, don't follow my example. I'm bad at Twitter. I use it a lot, but I'm bad at it. So I'm hoping to start following my own advice. And part of me giving this presentation is a way to learn to teach this lesson to myself. So that's kind of a thread that I want to. It's kind of like a meta lesson, which is when you guys give presentations in the future, you can also use it as a way to get better at what you're not great at, which is me and Twitter in this case. All right, so we're wrapping up with this presentation. We're almost over. So the action items, which is all you really need to do other than getting on Twitter, so get on Twitter, is if you haven't started a project, I want you to do 2 things. I want you to generate a ranked list of project ideas that you want to work on. Use what we talked about already in, you know, maybe your personal website, maybe it's something for this community, maybe it's a problem that you have, maybe, you know, it's one of those things. Just generate a ranked list of ideas. Then generate a list of missing knowledge, things that you're like, oh, I think I need to learn this. Oh, I think I need to learn that. And then email me those 2 lists. That's it. So that's what I want you to do, you know, in the next day or so. And then finally, for next week, and so this is kind of like when shit gets real. next week, think, okay, how do I get the hello world version of a project on my list? And how can I be ready for a demo next week of that hello world thing? So if you're building a website, a personal website, you might just have a personal website that literally just says hello world deployed to your domain name. That would be awesome. That's what I'm talking about. And so just build the hello world version of your project for next week. It could be a lot harder. It could be a lot easier, but we'll try to get there. If you've already started, I want you to think about what is the minimum demoable product. It doesn't have to be impressive. It just needs to be working end to end. So for example, if you're trying to build the next, let's say, the next Zoom, maybe what you want is, okay, I just want to be able to start a video call, just one video call. And that's it. Like that to me is the minimum demoable product, or that might be what you're saying. Somebody else might be like, oh, I want to build the next Zoom, and I'm going to build a website. So the minimal demoable product is a website that just says sign up, and I take a sign up form. It doesn't matter. Like the description is up to you to define what is minimum demoable, but send me that description of what you think that is. And then next Thursday, try to be ready to demo something. Just something. And for demos, it's okay. Things are running locally, but you really, really, really want them to be in production. Like if you can get something demoable in production, that's like, all right, we're going to make crazy progress here if we can do that. And finally, so everybody get on Twitter, send me your handle. I'll put them all together. We'll support each other. What's up, fam? Next thing is send me your email, the thing that I told you about. So if you've already started, send me the email of your minimum just demoable product. If you haven't started, send me those 2 lists of project ideas and what you think you are missing in terms of knowledge. Then book office hours. So again, I'm going to require that you have a written memo. Just get into that habit of, hey, this is what I'm doing, be intentional about it. And then reach out to potential collaborators. So you're going to meet people in the next, I think, 10 minutes or so. Yes, I'm doing so well on time. In the next 10 minutes or so. And we will just kind of meet and talk and go from there. So that is my prepared remarks. I had no idea how long that presentation was going to take, but I'm pretty happy with the time. I think we hit just about 40 some minutes or so. At this point, like I think I'm gonna just turn it over to you guys, and if you have any questions, feel free to ping them in the chat, or turn off mute and just ask them. So it's a safe space here, and we'll do that, and then I'll turn off the recording to go into the breakout sessions after that. Everyone's had a chance to ask questions. So I got a question, init a group project mate. So does that mean like, can you clarify what that means? Isn't this a group project? The entire thing. So what we're not going to be working on one group project. The idea is for everybody to be working on their own project. And you can group up with people, work with people, but it's not going to be just one. And so that's kind of the idea. All right, do we have any other questions? All right, cool, he says.
Phil, what's your project going to be?
My project, that's an interesting one. Well, that's funny because so far I've been spending a lot of time on Software Mentor, as Nick knows. But we've also got another project that mostly Nick has been working on, and so we might demo that at some point. So I'll be helping out with Nick on his. And Nick just asked a question. So hey, Nick, just say hi.
Hey, I'm Nick. I've been working with Phil for probably a bit over a year now. We met at Uber, same team, and we're working together there for a couple months, and then decided we would leave and just build a number of projects on our own. And so that's what we've been doing since January. Definitely did not expect to still be sitting at home at this point, but here's where we are. So yeah, and I'll put my time on Calendly as well if anyone wants to book office hours. I might not have as many open hours as Phil, but yeah, I'll be helping out here as well.
Alrighty, we've got a few more questions that have entered. So the next one question is, so when will the project start? The project start as soon as you want. Like literally, the project start right now. If you're working on a GitHub project or whatever, just that's a kickoff. So that was one question. Another question is, are you going to email the recording for this meeting? Yes, it's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be public. You can share it so other people can participate and join. This is not a formal like class or anything. This is just it's a accountability kind of process, kind of support group. It's kind of a nebulous thing in that sense. But so yes, this is going to be, the recording is going to be emailed. It's going to be public. It's going to be on YouTube. Will we be choosing group mates through Discord or here? So the idea is to meet people here on the breakout session, but over Discord is probably where a lot of those conversations are going to continue. So that's it'll be a process, and you don't have to form groups immediately. You don't have to even form groups, and it can be like, hey, I'm going to work with these people for the first 30 days. In the next 30 days, I'm going to work with these group of people. Whatever like makes sense over time. So it doesn't have to. It's not a rigid thing. And you could even try to work on 2 projects. Like, that's not ideal, but at work that does happen when you're working on multiple projects. And so, I wouldn't recommend it, but I'm not going to stop you. What do you do if you don't have any programming experience? How to start a project, and what would be a couple project ideas to not get lost? Okay, if you don't have any programming experience, that's going to be it's going to be a more interesting problem, because it's the amount of knowledge you need to acquire is going to be very, very large. And for people who have no programming experience, I might have a separate plan for them. And so just email me with what you think you need to learn, and we'll figure something out there. How many hours do we need to devote here? That's entirely up to you. And so the minimum I would imagine to get a project deployed up and running will, like, it really depends on the person if you have experience doing that. And so it's up to you. The only thing that I am going to not require, but I'm going to try to do is these Thursday meetups. And so that's going to be an hour. And so at bare minimum, if you just want to watch the meetups and not really build anything, that's okay, but you're not going to get nearly as much out of it. How complex are the projects that others are working on? That I don't know yet, so we'll figure out. And then okay, I think that was referencing another question. And I see. So yeah, this is not really a project where we're all necessarily going to learn the same thing. This is more of a project to essentially guide people to build stuff. And when we do resume review, that's actually a great topic. We might talk about that. Yeah, resumes could be a very useful topic. I just wrote about resumes on Software Mentor, and that's a very timely topic. What technologies are Nick and I most proficient in? Okay, Nick, you want to go first on this one?
All right. Yeah. I first got involved programming with iOS, and so I've been building iPhone apps since, gosh, it's probably since high school, which counting years is kind of tough. But so anyway, iOS development mostly, and then when we were at Uber, I did mostly backend development, and so that was dealing with a lot of Go, a bit of Java as well. When I first got there, everything was written in Python, and so Python experience as well. But I wouldn't recommend building something bigger, complex in Python.
Although for these projects, it could actually be really good.
Yeah, Python could be great for like a small little project if you're kind of just getting started. Python's a great language, but don't build a giant payment system in Python. That's not recommended. Um, yeah, so mostly iOS and backend experience. That's what I have. And then I recently started learning web development in the past month or so. Um, there's a lot that's similar between iOS and web development and a lot that's different. But yeah.
Yeah, and then on my side, I started my career full stack, so I am familiar with some front end stuff. When I was first starting on the front end, I was using Angular 1.3, and now it's like that's not in vogue anymore. I am familiar with React now, but not super familiar. But I know enough to get around. And then on the back end, I'm familiar with Go and Java, and so those are kind of my main areas of comfort. I can hop into other things, but not going to be able to have a ton of expertise. Alrighty, and we got a couple other questions. Actually, let's cut this off at the 55-minute mark and just do. Well, I'm gonna do some. We're gonna hop into breakout rooms, groups of I think 4 or so, or 4 or 5, and then I'm gonna answer these last couple questions first. Hey Nick, you want to answer one on Objective-C versus Swift real quick? Just one or the other.
Yeah, I would just say if you're starting today, use Swift. It'll be a lot easier. You'll save a lot of time. And yeah, the community has definitely shifted to Swift in the past couple of years.
Cool. And then the final thing is, can you go into more detail about code versus no code and how it will affect fringe candidates? So I actually don't really know how that's going to shake up, but what I do know is I'm seeing a lot of momentum on no code. And it's a very interesting thing to me. So if you currently don't know how to code, this would be a very fascinating thing to look into. Is okay. One philosophy that I love to that I have is I am not I'm not somebody who writes code. I am somebody who solves problems, who also knows how to write code, and that's kind of my mentality. And so when I look at no code, I'm like, this is really interesting, because on one side, the engineer, the person, the programmer in me is like, oh shit, that's a threat. It's also like, oh shit, that's like that can do what I can do, like in less time or whatever. But then the other side of me gets really excited. It's like, holy shit, that can do what I can do, but faster. And I get really excited about that. And I think a lot of people are getting really excited about what no code can do. I think there will be natural limitations, but just like if you look at what a disruptive innovation is, it's oftentimes different but shittier than what's out there. And no code definitely has that profile. It's different, it's faster, it's shittier, it doesn't scale as well. There's all sorts of things that you can get yourself difficult, into bad situations with, but it's potentially that speed of development, the speed of creation could be a huge thing. So that's what I think about when I think about no code. If you don't know how to code right now, it's definitely something to look into. If you do know how to code a little bit, I don't think it's a great investment of your time right now, but it's something to be aware of. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. And definitely something a trend to keep abreast with, something that we might talk about later on in the summer, and think about how we can coexist with no code. Okay, so at this time, I'm gonna let people think. If you want to, you can drop out. If you don't want to participate in the breakout groups, I'm also going to stop the recording. And so we are going to move into the last little section. So I'm going to do that right now.